Hello, BookTube. It's Wednesday, and that means Epic Comic Book Wednesday, when Michael K. Vaughan and I combine the forces of stately Vaughan Manor and Hyde Cottage to talk about the comic books on which we've wasted our youths. And I was thinking about giving Epic Comic Book Wednesday a miss this week. This week is a little bit crowded with work, and some of that work is turning out to be a little bit gnarlier than I thought. So I was just going to skip it along with everything else that I might talk to you about today. But Hannah loves these comic book videos so much that I can't deprive her. Especially since today is a winner. Those of you who don't know this series, I horned my way in to a series that was just innocently minding its own business on Mike's channel. And as a result, the price I pay for him putting up with me is that he gets to pick what we talk about every week, which is expanded from the title of the series. Marvel's Epic Collections are their paperback full-color reprint line of their vast back catalog. The pages are slick, the production design is good, the price is high. You're paying $50, almost. Probably $50 by the time I make this video, with tax. But you get a lot. For that money, you get a lot. They cram each Epic volume with not only issues, but special features as well. Lots and lots of stuff. And they're far more convenient to actually use to stuff in your bag or have on your nightstand than Marvel's gigantic hardcover omnibus editions, which they are continuing to make, or Marvel's hardcover Masterworks editions that are twice as expensive, and hardcovers are a little bit less comfortable than paperbacks. As a result, the Epic Collection line has taken off. It's hugely popular for Marvel for two reasons. One, those design reasons that I talked about, and two, Marvel Comics is currently not publishing anything that's worth, I was going to say the paper it's printed on, but the paper it's printed on is fairly expensive at this point. Let's just say Marvel Comics is not publishing currently any superhero comics that are worth your attention. And they haven't been for quite some time. Since I don't even know. We're going on 10 years since the superhero comic book industry was ideologically captured and is now being run by religious zealots who could not care less about profit. When you and 10,000 other fans write in and say, this thing you're doing on this comic, we all hate it. They call home. Collect, of course, because they don't make any money. They call home to their parents, cheering about that. That is a mark of honor to them. So it's literally an upside-down world. Every single one of those people needs to be fired, and the money people just need to come in and say, look, the world is brimming with comic book fans who know exactly how to fix this problem. We're going to shut things down and hire them all, get this thing back on track, and make it pay its weight. But you're all going to be gone. You're all going to be ruining some other industry. And for those two reasons, Marvel's Epic Collections are extremely popular. They put out a lot of them. You could fill a floor-to-ceiling bookcase with Epic Collections, and some of those Epic Collections would be valuable. Sometimes Marvel comes out with an Epic Collection, and it is snapped up right away by collectors. It disappears. They might reprint it down the line, but that first edition, maybe if Marvel is canny, they throw in a few differences between the two. That first edition could be very, very valuable to other collectors who have wash their hands of current floppy comic books. They don't want anything to do with 8 pages of blue-haired characters not only eating, but talking about what they eat. And then the utterly contemptuous writers of these comics snicker at themselves, the man babies are going to want some action. So they have Dr. Doom show up at the last page, and the character hits him once, and he's unconscious. He flies across the room. Since that's what you're getting, and since nobody wants that, demonstrably nobody wants that, back issue sales, effectively what this is, are very healthy. There are lots and lots of Epic Collections, but the number's not limited. And Marvel seems to have odd ideas about what they should and shouldn't reprint. Some of those ideas are not odd. Some of them are transparent. If the studio division of Marvel Comics has a property that's in the theaters that they want to sell, then they will find the comic book back issues of that character and reprint them in an Epic Collection, even without demand. There was no demand for a Morbius the Living Vampire Epic Collection. There was no demand for that whatsoever. Aside from a few people who really ought to seek professional help, there was no demand for ever more than one Moon Knight epic collection, except it happened to be a flop of a series on TV. Perfectly good idea, perfectly good concept, a couple of good people working in the visuals of the streaming service realization of Marvel's lame-ass character Moon Knight, until you get to, well, it's implied in the climax of the first episode, and it's there in every other episode, that Moon Knight is the hero, sure, but he's going to need his bacon saved by a woman, and she's going to be no more than 70 pounds soaking wet. Once fans see, in other words, it's the same old, same old. They just, if you're in the movie theaters, keep an eye out for a trailer for Air Force One Down, an upcoming action show. Air Force One Down. Keep an eye out for that. It's a young woman is in the lead. She is the action hero. She is 70 pounds, soaking wet with rocks in her pockets. But when a 7 foot tall, murderous, armed mercenary swings at her like that, she goes like this to block it, and it just stops like he's hit a brick wall. In fact, a character like that could probably make headway with a brick wall, but not her arm, not her spaghetti noodle thin arm. No, no. Anyway, this was not meant to be a rant. What the advantage that Epic Collections have over Marvel's other reprint efforts is that Epic Collections can bounce around. They're not just progressing from the very first appearance of a team or a character all the way to the end. They're not doing what Marvel Masterworks are doing, or what the Omnibus Editions have to do. The Omnibus Editions trade on their completeness. Instead, the Epic Collections get to bounce around. And the reason why it's useful for them to bounce around is because of, say it with me now, the Stan Lee virus. You didn't think you were going to get through an Epic Comic Book Wednesday without me mentioning my number one bête noir, did you? When Stan Lee introduced real stakes, the absolute ridiculousness that is verisimilitude into comics where characters throw magic hammers, he introduced a pattern that has to keep upping the ante. I never dreamt about it at the time that the Stan Lee virus was introduced, but had I had the dystopian mind frame necessary, I would have said as soon as I saw the Wasp, a member of the Avengers, get shot by a thug and need to be rushed to the hospital or she'll die. The minute I saw that, I should have stood outside Tro's dry goods store and said out loud, this means that in no more than 50 years, a villain is going to dig up the dead bodies of Bruce Wayne's slain parents and use them as a prop in a story. This opens the door for the psych ward in terms of writers. I would have been right if I'd said that, but it never occurred to me that this wouldn't be shut down. But if you're going to have the Stan Lee virus in comics, that means you're going to have drastic ebb and flow to what's going on in an issue of, the Avengers or the Defenders or the Inhumans or whatever. You're going to have drastic ebb and flow because the writers will be auditioning for the part based on the big changes that they're thinking about. What are some big storylines? What about a character that we could kill or fundamentally change? In real comics, in comics that don't feature lame-ass heroes like Spider-Man or Wolverine, he grows knives out of his knuckles. Yeah, that's lovely. Don't you want to be that when you grow up, kids? In the golden age of comics, in comics before the Stan Lee virus, the whole point was that there were no runs, there were no ups and downs, there were no ebbs and flows. Every issue of Captain Marvel Jr. that you got, every issue of Superboy or Adventure Comics that you got, was going to be more or less exactly the same as the one before it. That was the whole point. That allowed millions of people to read these things and enjoy them, and then throw them away, or put them in a box so that years later their mother could throw them away. But not if you have Days of Our Lives type melodrama storylines where things are at stake and things can change forever, and not a hoax, not a dream, not an imaginary story. As long as you have that, then you will have a turnover of creators who will be looking to make the book as different as they can be, as different as they're allowed to make it, which will create a comic book phenomenon known as runs. Because sometimes, I hate to say it, but nevertheless, you have to acknowledge reality, sometimes that Stan Lee virus, that pattern of ebbs and flows, will produce just the right combination of artist and writer. or in many cases, the writer and artist will be the same person, where they will come on, they will pitch a new direction for the book, or it will grow organically, and suddenly the stories will be incredible. Just amazing. And if you are a steady reader of that title, you won't be thinking, a new issue of Bullet Man. I'm just going to ease into this Justice Society issue. There'll be trouble, there'll be setbacks, there'll be a clever solution, and everything will be the same as it was when it started. You're not thinking that. Instead, when there's a run, when the writer and the artist are on fire, when they have a chemistry, instead of thinking, you'll be thinking about the feeling you have right when the roller coaster is topping the hill and is about to go down. You're feeling unbelievable excitement. When a comic book is on a run, in ye olden times, I don't think they have runs now, except runs in the stockings of the female characters who are beating Galactus with one punch. But I don't think there are runs now because the writers aren't very talented and the artists are abysmal. In most cases, they're abysmal. But in ye olden times, if a comic suddenly had a run, no offense to the workaday writers and artists who worked on it before, but the run will be better. Just better. It will just be more enjoyable. And people will flock to it. Word of mouth will make people flock to it. I remember this happening a million times. Once I left the dry goods store and started interacting with other comic book fans, I remember that word of mouth, where the word would be that such and such a book, whether you like it or not, whether you've ever been a fan of Daredevil or not, word would get out, hey, Daredevil's fantastic now. And you would get an issue, and you would see immediately that great runs on comics are almost visually undeniable. The Epic Collection line is not numerically sequential. That was designed so that the editors could bounce all around and center on runs. Reprint stuff that fans really want to see. And that is the grist for the mill of our topic today for Epic Comic Book Wednesday. Because today is Epic Comic Book Collections that don't exist yet and really should. Some of them don't exist for fairly obvious mercantile reasons. I'm going to start with those. And then others don't exist maybe for copyright nightmares or because Marvel editors just haven't thought about what a gem they have on their hands. Now, this is going to be a topic where Mike's choices and mine are probably going to diverge quite a bit because his taste in comics, as I've mentioned many times before, is reputedly deplorable, except when it precisely coincides with my own. So you're probably going to get a lot of garbage on his list. But I would be amazed if we don't overlap at least in a couple of things. So I want to start off. I've got a multimedia production for you here. I want to start off with runs on comics that are legendary in Marvel, that Marvel has never made Epic Collections from. And part of the reason, like I say, the reason for that is mercantile. If they're going to make a $150 hardcover omnibus of these runs, they're not going to make a $45 paperback reprint of part of that run, or they might think some of their bean counters might think that they're cutting into their own profits. Of course they're not. That's not how comic book collectors work. They're not kids with paper routes. They have disposable income. So if you make a paperback that is a chunk of a hardcover omnibus, they're going to get both. It's a simple thing. They're going to get both. And the only reason the marketing people at Marvel don't know that is because Marvel has divorced itself completely from its readers. There are no fans left working at any level of the industry. So they don't know. They just don't have any idea. One of the most famous, I'm going to show you just, I think, 3 legendary runs in Marvel Comics. The first being John Byrne's run on the Fantastic Four, which is, I love the Fantastic Four. I've always been a fan of the comic, but it's had more downs than ups in terms of runs, in terms of creator slates. And John Byrne came on as writer and artist, and there's no way to deny it. His run on the Fantastic Four is just amazing. This cover is an illustration by John Byrne of a whole bunch of Marvel characters. Here, let's get the brightness down on this so that you can see, because this isn't the only cover that I'm going to show you. I think I have the brightness up. Yeah, there we go. This cover is all of classic Marvel Comics characters cheering on the Fantastic Four. You'll notice there's some gentlemen up there at the top. The guy with the cap on is Willie Lumpkin, the mailman at the Baxter Building, and there's Stan Lee, and there's a big blank spot where Jack Kirby should go. But Marvel has made a big omnibus of this, 2 of them, in fact, I think, that'll set you back $200. The first printing of the first omnibus of this, God only knows. I believe that the first printing of the John Byrne era Fantastic Four omnibus is out of print and collectible. But this has everything, or almost everything. This has half of Byrne's run. It has all the great stuff. Before he started farming out a lot of the line edits and the dialogue and also the backgrounds, and then finally some of the inking himself so that he did layouts and whatnot. This has all of his best stories on the Fantastic Four, and it's a great thing. It would be wonderful if there were a Marvel Epic collection of this, but no. No, not so far. And I want to show you 2 other runs that are just well acknowledged as some of the best comic book runs Marvel has ever done, that they have not made epic collections of, probably for that reason. Next one is Frank Miller on Daredevil. This is another example where the writer and artist are the same person. He took over first the artwork and then the writing and artwork for one of Marvel's dumbest characters, a blind superhero who wears skin-tight leotards and fights crime as just a guy. He's just a guy. So if Daredevil swings on his line, first of all, that would pull your shoulder out of its socket every time you tried it. But if he swings on his Daredevil line into your warehouse parking lot in order to bring down your organization, the guy on the roof shoots him. The end. But no, Daredevil's a big favorite with the fans, and this gigantically supercharged that fandom because Miller's run on Daredevil is amazing. Just incredible. And Marvel has done paperback reprints of this with their old Visionary series, but they haven't done an epic collection that starts with the very beginning with Daredevil fighting Night Stalker and moves on to the very end. Or at least an epic collection could take us through the climax of the Elektra saga in Daredevil. At least we could do that. But they don't do it because I guess they think they can make lots of money not doing it. And then the third of these must have runs. The third of these in modern Marvel. Of course, I'm not referring to the classic runs in Marvel Comics. Stan Lee and Steve Ditko on Spider-Man and on Doctor Strange. Stan Lee and Jack Kirby on the Fantastic Four and Thor. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about more recent great runs. This is the third. Any comic book fan will, if you ask them, you shouldn't, because they're mealy-mouthed incels whose breath smells of Doritos. But if you wanted to do that, if you asked them, what are some great runs on Marvel Comics, they would say these 3. There is almost no disagreement among Marvel Comics. The third one, of course, I'm talking about is Walt Simonson's run on Thor, where, again, it's the same person who is both writer and artist. He took over and changed the book without changing anything. He didn't change anything major. He just pumped new life into it. That's what runs do. They pump new life into a comic so that suddenly Byrne on the Fantastic Four, Frank Miller on Daredevil, Walt Simonson on Thor, suddenly you were going to your comic shop and saying, make sure I get the next issue. I can't wait for the next issue. And again, Marvel has reprinted this. They reprinted this as an enormous hardcover. I had that hardcover forever and ever until I realized I wasn't using it because it's just not comfortable to use. Epic collections of these 3 great runs would be terrific. And I want to point out 2 other runs here. I'm just going to jump all around my pictures here. I want to point out 2 other runs that Marvel has had that are also great. They aren't as universally acclaimed as those 3, but I've yet to meet anyone who didn't like these runs once they experienced them, and they had the same effect, where they took some lame-ass idea. Most of Marvel's ideas are lame-ass. They took some lame-ass idea, and suddenly fans of comics were talking to other fans saying, look, I know you don't like this, but you got to be reading this every month. And it worked. Those people who were told that would then go and read it and say, I don't like this. I don't like the character. I've never liked this book, but you're right. This is fantastic stuff. I can't miss it. As long as it's this good, I can't miss it. I want to show you 2 more runs like that Marvel has had that have not had epic collections. And the first one is, I think, one of the areas, I don't know if this will be on Mike's list, but if it is, it will be because this is one of the areas in which he and I completely agree, and that is Tomb of Dracula. This was a long run that Marvel did on their realization of the character of Bram Stoker's Dracula. And once this series settled in, with Marv Wolfman doing the writing and Gene Colan and Tom Palmer doing the artwork, once that team settled in, this became an unmissable book. Full, believe it or not, full of character. It wasn't just scare of the month. It was genuinely really good. And Marvel used to have a dorky, very poorly made paperback line. I don't even remember what it was called. Maybe my mind is saying Essentials, but I think I might have that wrong. That might be their paperback line, the paperback reprint line on poor paper. But they also had, Mike would probably know, they had paperback reprints that they did sporadically, the paperback volumes that were reprinted. Another thing we're going to be talking about had one of those as well. But Tomb of Dracula has never had an actual epic collection, and it really needs one, at least one. And the same thing is true. This next one's going to be a bit of a reach. You're going to have to believe me here, because this has flown under the radar, and you might not know about it. And it's one of Marvel's lamest-ass characters, so you wouldn't believe it. But once upon a time, Marvel had a largely defunct character named Kazar, who was a Tarzan ripoff, exactly like what you would think. A scion of English nobility who lands in a jungle land and befriends the animals and starts running around in a loincloth. That's what Kazar was introduced as. That's what he was made to be, was a Tarzan ripoff a long time ago. He has appeared in lame-ass comic after lame-ass comic for a long time, and he's always been a bit of a punchline. I mean, he might show up in Spider-Man. Always great to see John Romita Sr. do the artwork. He might show up in the X-Men. But he was always kind of a joke. I mean, if Daredevil is just a normal guy in red spandex, Kazar is just a normal guy without even the red spandex. But at one point, 40 years ago, Marvel gave this book to a writer named Bruce Jones, and he redid it from the ground up. You read this first issue with art by Brent Anderson, who went on to be the artist on Astro City. You read this first issue, and you think, okay, well, I don't know who that is in this comic, but it was great. It was great. This is a rare example in Marvel Comics where the writing actually held me as much as the artwork. And they kept being great. The issues kept being great. 5, 6, 10, 11, even when the artwork changed, even when the writer changed, this still stayed really good. It's certainly big enough to fill an epic collection. It was strange because it wasn't Kazar. It was Bruce Jones basically admitting, and for all I know, in an interview in Amazing Comics, he did admit that there's nothing you can do to save the original version of this character. What I need to do in order to make him interesting is to change him completely. And fans reflected that in the letters page. One fan wrote in to Kazar the Savage and said, well, okay, in the first issue, Kazar tells an elaborate dead parrot joke. And it's funny, and it's also moving, and it works to move the plot along, but not to put too fine a point on it, but since when does Kazar tell dead parrot jokes? And a whole bunch of fans agreed with that. And yet, the fans weren't saying Kazar shouldn't. They were saying, as long as you're giving us this character, well, go ahead. If he's completely different, let's see what you've got. It was just that good. Neither Tomb of Dracula nor the Bruce Jones run on Kazar have ever been given the reprint treatment that they do. Tomb of Dracula has had an omnibus, I believe, hardcover omnibus, and it had those dorky trade paperbacks where the cover comes right off the text block. But Kazar, this run of Kazar, I don't think has ever been reprinted. If you were going to make an epic collection of this, I'm not really sure how long Kazar the Savage ran. I think it ran plenty long enough to have an epic collection. If you were going to have this and you wanted to fill it out, you might throw in some Golden Age Kazar to show where the character started. Maybe something from Jungle Tales or later than that to show other iterations. Maybe one of those guest stars appearances in X-Men or Spider-Man or whatever. You might do that. Like I said, epic collections are really great in all the extra stuff you get. You definitely get your money's worth. They aren't cheap, but you definitely get your money's worth with them. They might do that. I don't know why they would, since no one liked that character, and people did like this character. But there's a thought. There's, I considering Michael K. Vaughan's affection. No one on BookTube has greater affection for Tarzan by Edgar Rice Burroughs. I doubt that Kazar will be on his list, but our next one might be. This was a franchise thing, so Marvel I might not be able to do an epic collection for this, but we're daydreaming here, right? We can daydream, and so I daydream about an epic collection of Kull, Marvel's Kull the Conqueror. I've talked about this run on the character before. Kull was another great Robert E. Howard character, and when they did this issue, you got the fold-out cover artwork first of all, and then you got fantastic John Buscema artwork inside. Look at the anatomy on those tigers. That is just great. And a lot of these issues kept up with that. A lot of these issues kept doing that. So. Actually, I should, since I'm showing you here, this is an example of the John Byrne era on Fantastic Four. This is considerably later than the issue the cover that I showed you. And this is the classic issue where he lampoons Stan Lee. where he says, what's the title say? What's big, green, and has a staple in her navel? Where he is a slimy publisher, and Byrne just has a blast with it. And the artwork is incredibly good. All throughout here. Just amazing. That is the John Byrne She-Hulk. What else have I mentioned here that I might show you? Oh, well, Daredevil. There you go. Let me show you what this looks like. I won't show you the ending of this one because the ending of this one is one of the greatest things in all of comics, but this is Frank Miller artwork. He made it gritty and noir-esque, and it really works, even though Daredevil is as lame-ass as they get. But Marvel could do an epic collection of this. They have done omnibus volumes of this. I don't know. Maybe they're not. The franchise for Robert E. Howard stuff is not theirs anymore, so maybe they can't. But we can dream. Then, let's see here. I've got a few other things to show you here of things that I wish were commemorated. Let's move on to other runs. I don't exactly know what the law is, what the parameters are for epic collections. Marvel is now doing something called Modern Epics, I think, something like that. It's a very good idea. Commemorating later things. I don't know what the cutoff is for epic collections. I really don't have any idea when that cutoff would be. It's not the 60s, it's not the 70s, and I don't think it's the 80s either. But Marvel has done later runs that were good. Before the company was ideologically captured, they did good stuff. So these modern epics are a good idea, and I have a couple of those that would probably fit under that heading. Like, for instance, there was a long run on Thor where Thor is not Thor, where his powers have been usurped by an ordinary human named Eric Masterson while he rests in hell. And the artwork is by Ron Frenz. And unlike the later issues when the powers of Thor are usurped by Jane Foster, by a woman, first of all, these issues don't lecture. Marvel Comics nowadays don't do anything except lecture. Be better. Okay? Be better. And hit me up on coffee because I don't have any money for the rent. Be better, though. I'm morally superior to you. Not only that, but also Eric Masterson transforms when he slams his walking stick into the ground. He transforms into a facsimile of Thor. So people thought it was Thor. He never thought of himself as Thor. He just thought he had Thor's powers. And those issues were really good. This is the run that I'm talking about here. Before this all spun off into Thunderstrike, where the character is rebranded. Thor comes back, but fans loved the character, so he stayed and got a new name and a new costume and whatnot. And these issues were terrific. I want to show you Ron Frenz's artwork because it was really good. It was really, really energetic. Yeah, look at that. Just terrific. Just fantastic. Ron Frenz is always great when he isn't. He's great when he imitates people, but he's also great when he doesn't. Just fantastic. Look at that. The Return of the Golden Bull. See, that panel is an homage to Jack Kirby, but a lot of this stuff is not. It was a terrific run. I think it would fill an epic collection. And then while we're on the idea of terrific runs, I want to show you a couple more. One is considerably later. It is Carlos Pacheco, who, with a little help in the scripting department, had a run on the Fantastic Four where he did the artwork. And That run is amazing. And as far as I know, outside of big hardcover Epic collections, it's never been collected. Not Epic collections, hardcover omnibus editions, which I used to have, but they aren't usable. I would like an Epic collection of this, thank you very much, from the moment when Pacheco takes over the artwork to the moment when he leaves. That is enough for... Actually, I have an example of this as well. This is that issue. And I want to show you his artwork because it's amazingly good. It really is. Just amazingly good. Lots and lots of... He's really good at implied motion, which is really helpful when you have a character like the Invisible Woman who's never going to see her motion anyway. But you see what I mean? You're not getting any dumb motion lines here. Instead, you're getting the implied motion, which is really, really good. And it's done all throughout this issue. And this issue has also... Pacheco adds all sorts of extra characters to the Fantastic Four mythos. I don't know if they're canonical still, but they were wonderful additions, wonderfully done. He throws in all sorts of variations on a theme, and it all works. It all works really well. So it'd be nice if it was in an Epic collection, so I don't have to keep hauling out these issues. And then one other thing I want to do, you might be wondering why I'm doing this, because these things have been in Epic collections. But we can dream. The nice thing about Epic collections, like I said, is the flexibility, the editorial flexibility that it gives Marvel's showrunners, Marvel's editors. They can plunk down on a run and not care about whether or not they've printed a volume anything before or after. This is true for an era of the Avengers. There was an era of the Avengers when everybody had big hair and people wore tank tops and field jackets. And it was written by Bob Harris and it was drawn by Steve Epting with truly wonderful work. There were the main storyline was Circe and Black Knight having some sort of doomed love affair. The team was led by Black Widow. It featured Hercules in a black tank top, and eventually it featured a whole bunch of other characters. And it's well done. Really well done. The problem is, Epting was being inked by Tom Palmer, and the visuals that they produce together are amazing. Just amazingly good. An underrated period in Avengers history. Very much so. Featuring Circe and Black Knight, featuring a weird alternate dimension team called the Gatherers, featuring a captive watcher and a weird alternate version of the Swordsman. Just wonderful, emotional stuff. With no one questioning that Black Widow would be in charge. No one questioning that Circe would be one of the most powerful characters on the team. There was no ideological posturing. It was just the way the Avengers work. The rotation changes from time to time. People come and go, and you wait to see what fans like, what chemistry fans will like. Fans really like this run. The problem is that Epting's artwork, done by Tom Palmer, took time. So you would get a few issues of that, 2 or 3, and then there would be 1 or 2 fill-in issues that would just be plopped down in the middle of there, where you get a love story starring Hercules, or you get the Vision having a weird experience with 4th stringer artwork. Horrible, clunky writing, just awful. I was getting these issues and I was loving them. The Harris Epting run on the Avengers, some of my favorite runs on the Avengers. But every month when I would go into the comic shop, I would say to the guy who ran it, who was a friend of mine, well, am I going to want the Avengers this month or not? I know that it's something you pull for me, but if it's not that team, if it's these 4th stringers, then I don't want those issues, so I'll buy something else instead. I'll make sure that you're not out that. But that happened. And as a result, you would get a great issue with a fantastic Steve Epting cover. Some of them were done with foil, silver foil or gold embossed foil for the cover, the gimmick of the day. Those issues were fantastic, but then the next month you'd get something that was just filler, pulled from a back filing cabinet. Marvel has done 2 Epic collections covering the Harris Epting run on the Avengers, and the only reason that they need 2 whole volumes to do that is because they're just printing it all, including the dumb fill-in issues that nobody likes. What is needed here, what I would ideally like in this fantasy version of Epic Comics, would be for somebody, some fan, to go through the Epic comic book collection issues of the Avengers here and pluck out the crap and just give us 1 volume of Harris and Epting. That's all it would take. When you get rid of the filler and the backup features and whatnot, you have 1 volume, 1 great volume. And those those fill-in issues do not advance the story at all. So just get rid of them. Just get rid of them and have this instead. that's why I'm holding this up. Now, I know it says Epic Collection right on there, but I want the Epic Collection of this. It doesn't force me to buy. The reason I don't have these 2 volumes is because when I ordered them at the bookstore and they came in, I was reminded, oh, so you're going to be paying $45 for $20 worth of material. $20 worth of material in the comic that you're buying is going to be stuff that you don't want to keep and that you never look at. so I didn't do it. I didn't end up doing it. What I'd like is an Epic Collection of this where I don't have to do that, where I don't have to worry about it. And there's one other run that I want to show you that has actually a couple more. Let's do a couple more. Let's see here. I want to vary up my visual aids. For instance, years and years ago, there was, who did the writing on this? Mark Grunwald. And the artwork is by Greg Capullo. I've mentioned this series before. This is a dumb third-string character named Quasar. I don't know that Michael K. Vaughan is a fan of Quasar, but he is definitely a fan of dumb, fourth-string, knockoff, completely derivative Marvel characters. So Quasar might show up on his list, or Nova, or any of these completely back of the cereal box, I just made this up in 5 minutes comic characters. And Quasar was one of those. Just an ordinary Brand X blonde superhero with amorphous energy powers. But for a little while, he got a comic book of his own. I have no idea how. He got a comic book of his own, and for a little while, on that comic, Grunwald and especially the artist Greg Capullo were putting out something playful and really fun. Here is a typical issue there. Of course, this is an homage to the famous Vanity Fair cover by Frank Frazetta. This is a storyline. The reason for the storyline is because there's a celestial being, an amazing golden-skinned woman who wants to procreate, and she figures, I will go to the various superheroes on Earth, and one of them will certainly procreate with me. And I don't know if you can tell from the hair there. Let me see if I can get you a good visual here, what I'm talking about. What the point that I've always made about this comic. That'll do. The point that I've always made about this comic is that, although it's never stated in these issues, I think it's pretty clear that Quasar would not be interested in that job. This Quasar, I don't think would be interested in that job. You see what I mean? Capullo's making about as obvious as he can. You couldn't do it at this time, but I love these issues. They are terrific, not just for that reason, you dirty-minded little marmosets. I love these issues. Quasar has never been reprinted in any way, I think because he's just so lame. But this run is what the Epic Collection they are made to commemorate runs. So if you've got a really great one, why don't you do that? A couple of other runs that I want to show you here. I could go on forever like this, but I also have some special creations that I want to mention. Let's just do two other runs. One is Salvador LaRocca. He's an artist that I absolutely love. He did a long run on the X-Men that was terrific. And I don't think this has ever been collected. I'm not sure. That the X-Men have had a lot of Epic collections, but I don't think this has ever been in one. I think I would have noticed and wanted it. I wanted it and got it. These issues are actually really, really good. Let me show you the highlight of that particular issue, since I went to the bother of having all my visual effects here. This is that issue. And I want to show you, LaRocca's artwork is just amazingly good. Just incredible. Full of really great type font, full of really hyper dramatic panel arrangements. his breath is blowing her hair, and see, you've got the added type font and color there. Really, really good stuff, and not collected as far as I know. This era of the X-Men has never been collected. Although we're getting a new X-Men Epic collection, I think this year, the Brood Saga. One of the reasons that I love this issue, I have to share this sequence with you. Of course, as you can tell from the cover, the villain in this issue is the Juggernaut, which you might be familiar with from a criminally underrated old X-Men movie, or from a great sequence in Deadpool. That's the way we do it in Mother Russia. The Juggernaut is not a mutant, despite what that X-Men movie would have you believe. He's not a mutant, but he is the closest thing that Marvel comes to a DC-level powered character. He's unstoppable. It's only the creme de la creme of Marvel characters that can bother him at all. So when he shows up, that's a big deal for the X-Men. And the X-Men in this particular era, look at that artwork. Just amazing. The X-Men of this particular era had all sorts of really cool 90s big hair characters who were really dumb. I know they're fan favorites, but they're really, really dumb. Like, for instance, Gambit, whose superpower is that he can charge up playing cards into really cheap fireworks that you would get by driving across the border into New Hampshire, so you don't have to pay tax on them. Or what's the other guy's name? What's the other guy's name? Bishop. Yes, he was a mutant from the future. All of his dramatic potential was squandered because people wanted to keep him around as a regular character. His original storyline would have been wonderful if it had ended, but it didn't. It didn't end. And his power is whatever you got. he absorbs energy and powers from people around him. So whatever you got, he'll take. And for some reason, in the big-haired 90s, these characters are considered badass and really cool. And when the Juggernaut surprises them, look at this great visual. Gambit is looking, they're on the water in a canal, in a sewer, and he looks into the water and sees the Juggernaut coming up at him from underneath. What a great visual. And the Juggernaut beats them both in about 5 seconds, which is just great. Gambit charges up some playing cards and throws them at Juggernaut, and Juggernaut literally does the plunk like that. And he goes bouncing across the water. And Juggernaut says what I was saying in every issue of the X-Men, saying, is it just me? Or do they not make X-Men like they used to? That's a little bit of the cartoon voice for you, those of you who are paying attention. This run really needs to be commemorated. And while we're on the subject, let's do another run, which has a big hardcover omnibus at long last. This also had those weird, crappy paperbacks that I got because I was so eager to get these issues that wouldn't be falling apart on me, but I got rid of them because, or they fell apart. Then I got the hardcover edition, the hardcover omnibus, and I still have it. But what I'd love is a paperback omnibus, an epic collection of the Invaders. There's Invaders #1. Look at that beautiful John Romita Sr. cover. I swear, it's like music. Look at how beautiful that is. This is John Romita Sr. on the cover, and then you get Jack Kirby doing the Submariner and the Human Torch, and especially Captain America. That's worth the price of admission right there. And you get Frank Robbins' artwork on the inside. Very good stuff. Vinnie Coletta really brings him under control, and that's very good. And that, I think I have an electronic version of that as well to show you. Yeah, I want an epic collection or two of the Invaders. That would be terrific. And those are all of the normal extant ideas for epic collections that I have. But I have two others that are a little bit on the strange side. I would really like it if Marvel would do them. And they would sell. Definitely, they would sell. Because the fans who remember them are the ones that have money. And there aren't any new fans. The new fans are already reading manga. They don't want to be lectured by their superhero comics, so they're not reading Marvel comics anymore. So you want to pitch your wares at people who can afford them and who would have a reason to remember them. My next idea for an epic collection, I don't think this has ever happened, although I think there was a big, huge omnibus hardcover once upon a time. My idea for my next epic collection would be Marvel original graphic novels. An epic collection of Marvel's original graphic novels. I'm not saying all of them. Let's say the first 13. These were longer, oversized, square-bound, paperback graphic novels that told big stories on their own. The first one was The Death of Captain Marvel. And then you went on from there with The New Mutants or Kill Raven or Bill Sienkiewicz did a Daredevil volume that was surreal and really good. There were some duds. Along the way. Bernie Wrightson did a dud with The Thing and the Hulk, but there were also great things here, including something that I don't know if you'd have the rights to, Dreadstar by Jim Starlin. And also Elric. P. Craig Russell doing Elric of Melniboné. In other words, this would be a copyright, a rights and permissions nightmare. And for that reason, I doubt that we'll ever see it. But in a dream, I would love a $45 hardcover of the original 12 or 13 Marvel graphic novels, even including the introduction of the New Mutants. This has Bob McLeod artwork. Bob McLeod is... he got his start drawing inanimate objects, and he never lost the knack. You show him an action sequence of any kind, and he can leech the action out of it. And yet, by random chance, because he happened to be the right person at the right time, he managed to have the artwork chores on one of the most important comic book moments of all time, when Clark Kent reveals to Lois Lane that he is Superman. And he does the artwork chores here, and the thing is massively overwritten, huge blocks of Les Miserables style text on every page. But put this in a collection with all of those other original Marvel graphic novels, including God Loves, Man Kills, more artwork by Brent Anderson, and do that as an epic collection. I would love that, and I bet fans would too. I bet that would sell. And then my last choice is my most unconventional. It will only apply to Marvel fans of a certain age. And it might be a little redundant. They would have to call it the Epic Collection. But for a while, Marvel did a magazine called Epic Illustrated. There's a great Michael Whelan cover. And these were showcase volumes. They were portmanteau volumes. So it wasn't any one storyline. It was a bunch of stories in every issue. I don't remember off the top of my head how many issues Epic Illustrated had. But I bet it had enough so that you could make an epic collection out of Epic Illustrated. I bet it did. And it should. Because otherwise this stuff is gone. Just gone. Better by far to commemorate it in a volume. Better by far to let it live on somebody's shelf as a book instead of a bunch of moldering issues in their long boxes. So that's my last suggestion here for an epic collection. It's an Epic Illustrated epic collection. That would be awesome. The only other suggestion that I have at the end of this video would be to go off reservation, because I know I started by saying that Marvel is the home of lame-ass heroes, and DC once upon a time was the home of real heroes. Another thing that I would love to see, just to close up here, would be if DC would do something like this. They barely do. Barely. And they should. They should do 3 of these a month. Marvel does at least one every month. DC should do 3 of these a month to catch up. Imagine a $45 paperback epic collection of classic Golden or Silver Age Superman, or World's Finest, or Batman, or the George Perez, Marv Wolfman Teen Titans. Imagine, I'm not even here advocating for my beloved Legion of Superheroes. DC has done a lot of Legion reprints. They could do more. They could do paperbacks, make them affordable, but they've done a lot. I'm talking about all the rest of DC. Imagine an epic collection of Gil Kane Green Lantern. Oh my. Oh my. Again, have somebody carefully pick through the issues and put everything you want in one place. Incredible. That would be incredible. I don't know why it doesn't happen, but it as far as I know, it doesn't happen. So there you go. That is our Epic Comic Book Wednesday. I'm afraid this will be today's only video. I'm pretty sure it will be the only video today. I didn't want to let Hannah down. She gets so down in the mouth when I don't talk about comics nonstop. I feel the same way when she doesn't talk about knitting. But these are legitimately good ideas. And I'm dying to know, once again, sometimes I do get a chance to watch Mike's video before I make my own. I haven't done that yet today because I'm kind of crowded in with work. This is one of those cases where I am dying to know how much we overlap. I can almost guarantee that we overlap on Tomb of Dracula. I can almost guarantee that because we both love it. It is so good, and it deserves better than Marvel has given it. But in paperback, I mean. And maybe we would agree on all of Marvel's iterations of Robert E. Howard, whether it's Conan the Barbarian, of course, but also Cull and also Frank Thorpe on Red Sonja. No, I don't know if Red Sonja comes under that umbrella. She doesn't seem to ever come along with the Howard franchise. Maybe because the visual iteration of the character wasn't created by Robert E. Howard, so maybe that frees it up for copyright. But maybe we overlap on Cull. But I guarantee you there's going to be garbage in his list. I guarantee. I'm going to go look at his video now and see how bad it gets. But another place that I'm sure we will overlap is the place that any Marvel fan would overlap, which is those runs that I was talking about. Walt Simonson on Thor, Frank Miller on Daredevil, and John Byrne on the Fantastic Four. Any Marvel fan would agree with that those should be reprinted in every format available. Fans will buy them all. You are not hurting yourself if you do that. You're not competing against yourself. Fans will buy them all. The Invaders, the fans that love the Invaders, I guarantee you they got that hardcover omnibus. I have it over on the shelf, even though it's heavy to use. Even though I have that volume, and even though I have all the original issues, obviously, I would still buy a paperback in a heartbeat. And so would any fan of the thing they love. So there you go. That is a long rumination on epic collections that don't exist but should. And I'm going to wrap this up for now. We'll see what trouble Michael K. Vaughan gets us into next week. Thank you, BookTube.